Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at a truly incredible 25-year evolution. We're going to trace the history of the Rwanda Defense Force, or RDF, and look at how it completely transformed. It went from a rebel movement of exiled refugees to this highly professional military force that's literally acting as a primary catalyst for national development today. It's just a fascinating look at how a military's role can radically shift, from fighting on the battlefield to literally building a nation.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to cover 1. The quest for home, 2. The liberation struggle, 3. Stopping the genocide, 4. The RDF mission today, and finally 5. National transformation. Now, before we get into the heavy history, it really helps to ground ourselves in the sweeping, peaceful landscape of modern Rwanda. It's vibrant, it's serene, but, and this is absolutely crucial to remember, we have to ground ourselves in the reality that this peace was hard-won. The modern stability we see today stands in stark contrast to the decades of marginalization, conflict, and the deep historical struggles that we're about to explore.
Section 1. The Quest for Home. Liberating Our Country.
I want to start with this quote from President Paul Kagame because it really establishes the profound emotional core of this entire movement. The first meaning of liberation is to free ourselves from disrespect. Liberation is about the fearlessness to stand up and fight for what is right. You see, according to the historical documents, for over 3 decades, Rwanda was run as an ethnocracy, where a huge part of the population suffered systematic marginalization and exclusion. The early refugees were repeatedly denied their basic rights as citizens. So this quote, it perfectly captures the deep motivation of a displaced people realizing they had to fight to simply exist in their own homeland.
Let's actually map this out chronologically, just to see exactly how long this quest took. The persecution and forced exile actually began way back in 1959. And for decades, refugees sought a peaceful return. But they were basically told by successive governments that the country was full. Well, realizing their demands were completely frustrated, these refugees founded the Rwanda Patriotic Front, or RPF, in 1987. By October 1990, recognizing that force might literally be the only option left on the table, they launched an armed struggle, which ultimately culminated in 1994 with the stopping of the genocide.
Section 2. The liberation struggle. The armed struggle.
So the crucial point is the sheer resilience of the early RPA. It's just undeniable. Mostly made up of the children and grandchildren of those original 1959 refugees, these troops stepped into a massive conflict as a small, entirely self-reliant group. And their early days? Well, they were defined by severe, almost insurmountable setbacks.
Actually, the most significant of these setbacks happened almost immediately. The RPA attacked Rwanda from Uganda on October 1, 1990. Literally just 1 day later, their commander-in-chief, Major General Fred Kagame, was killed, and soon after that, other senior commanders also died. The source material notes this caused a near collapse in morale which, as you can imagine, makes total sense. But under the leadership of then Major Paul Kagame, who took over command, the force was completely reorganized. They transformed into this relatively small, highly mobile fighting force that relied heavily on self-reliance for all their equipment and supplies.
And honestly, they needed that mobility because they were facing a massive uphill battle. The RPA had to fight a government regime that wasn't just well-established, but was heavily supported by powerful external actors. The sources point out that countries like France and regional allies like Zaire provided significant assistance and combat support to the government forces. So picture this. You have a small, self-funded guerrilla force pushing against a heavily backed state military, simply to secure their right to return home.
Section 3. Stopping the Genocide. 1994.
According to the provided historical texts, as the government struggled to contain and defeat the advancing RPA, it organized a systematic campaign of mass killing. The target was Rwanda's Tutsi community, as well as members and supporters of opposition groups. The documented plan was to eliminate a whole section of the population that the ruling elite considered to be a problem. Now, the RPF leadership had absolutely not anticipated this horrific reaction to their armed struggle for repatriation.
What happened next is a really stark contrast in action. Observers repeatedly warned the international community that genocide was likely, yet they failed to intervene or stop the killings. Because the outside world stepped back, the RPF and the RPA had to step in. It became an absolute necessity for them to take total responsibility. They had to dismantle the regime by force, bring the planners to book, and physically stop the brutality to save lives. And this moment permanently defined the military's relationship with the Rwandan people.
Section 4. The RDF mission today. A professional force.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the modern emblem of the Rwandan Defense Force. It symbolizes a massive, highly successful transition. They evolved from being a guerrilla army, the RPA, to a highly professional state force, the RDF. They achieved exactly what they set out to do. But, as they note in their own 25-year reflection, liberation is a continuous process.
And you can see this reflected directly in their legal mandate. Yes, of course, like any military, they are tasked with defending territorial integrity and safeguarding public order. But specifically, look at points 3 and 4. They are legally mandated to participate in humanitarian activities and to actively contribute to the socioeconomic development of the country. They literally view human security, like fighting poverty and building infrastructure, as a core part of national defense. Oh, and they also actively participate in international peacekeeping missions across the globe. And this brilliantly illustrates the shift. The historical reality of RPA troops marching on a dirt path stands in sharp contrast to the beautifully paved, modern Rwandan highways of today. The military didn't just win a war and go back to the barracks, you know? They picked up tools and actively helped build the infrastructure of a modernized nation.
Let's move to and see how this builds our final section. Section 5, National Transformation, Role and Development.
Get ready for some staggering numbers. The data notes 283,233 kilometers of roads constructed. This represents the military acting as a direct contributor to the economy, making sure that people, goods, and services can move freely and safely across a unified nation.
And how about this? 579,771 patients treated. The RDF plays a profound role in public health. By providing medical care to over 500,000 citizens, they're really reinforcing the idea that a nation's greatest resource is a healthy, thriving population. Security isn't just about borders, right? It's about the physical well-being of the people. 87,640 homes constructed for the vulnerable. And these aren't just isolated houses. The data notes these were built across 34 model villages. I mean, think back to where this all started, with refugees seeking a home. Now, the modern military is literally building homes for the most vulnerable citizens, fundamentally restoring basic human dignity. And finally, 80,533 households provided with clean, distributed water. Tying these rapid-fire numbers back to the core theme of this explainer, this is what ongoing national liberation actually looks like in practice. It's about securing the basic necessities of life so that citizens can focus on the future rather than just survival. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. What does true national liberation look like when the battlefields turn into building sites? The 25-year history of the Rwanda Defense Force really challenges us to rethink the very purpose of a military. From exiled refugees fighting to return to a professional force laying the literal bedrock of a modernized state, it's a transformation that asks us to redefine what it means to truly defend and build a nation. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this leaves you curious to explore even more about this incredible journey.